Welcome to your local community education podcast, where you can make a difference and be heard. Each week, get updated on current local, state, and national educational news. Your Voice, Your Choice podcast with your host, Harmony Vanderhorst.
Thanks, and welcome to the show. Today we have
Erica Hodges
and Dana McCabe
with us today. Our victory minute for this week is in the last month, we've actually had some steady growth on our Facebook page. We've had almost 100 new people on there, so that's pretty exciting. That means more people in Southern Utah are getting involved and finding out about us. Our agenda for today, we've got some local, state, and national education news. Our deep dive topic of the week is homeschool versus public school. What's right for your family, and what community needs do we have, and what is wonderful in Southern Utah. We'll start out with the local stuff for this week. We didn't have a meeting this week. Our next meeting is December 14th. So you need to save that date or make it a date. This is a good opportunity if you're married or single, or if you got kids at home, you want to leave your husband, make it a girls' night out or a guys' night out.
Or if you're going to have kids.
Yeah, if you're going to have kids and you're going to live in this community, even if you're moving, it's a good time to just get educated about how the school board works and how it affects your community. We encourage people to show up at 4 o'clock. If you show up at 4 o'clock, that's when we're going to kind of go over the meeting, how it works, if you have questions. We will actually be there probably most of the day, starting between 12 and 2. We're never really sure what time. If you want to come earlier, you can too. But 4 o'clock, the actual meeting starts at 4:30. If you want to comment, you have to be there by 4:30 to put your name on a list.
And just to let you know, you'll have to sit through the meeting before you can make public comment. Usually that's probably runs about an hour.
Yeah, hour to hour and a half, depending on what's going on.
Can I throw in a shout out to Farmstead Bakery? If you
Yes.
need some energy before the meeting, just go over to the corner there and it would be great.
Yeah, and sometimes we actually meet over at the bakery before we go to the meeting too. And so this meeting too that's coming up, we actually don't know what's on the agenda. So how that works is Kelly Blake is the president, and he's the one that has the way we understand it is he's the one that has the final say. They do have to post it. Is it 24 hours in advance or a couple days?
I believe so.
I think it's a couple days in advance. They post what's on the agenda on the website. This is one of those things that we are trying to create some relationships with our school board members so that we can make the community more aware of what's going on, and so that we can be more aware of what's going on more than 24 hours in advance. Some of the things that we hope that are going to be on the agenda, we're hoping that they're going to address our growing concerns about our district's the SEL, social emotional learning program. We currently use Second Step in most of our elementary schools here. There's a lot of concern about this. If you've watched Kenyon School District up north, they've had a lot of issues and things with that. I believe there's a couple other school districts in the state that use it as well.
Yes, but let's remind them that Canyon school districts were able to get that Second Steps out of their district.
Yep, they completely took it out, and our district is currently still using it. So we're hoping that they're going to address that.
Do you mind if I jump in here a little bit and talk about a little bit about the SEL? So there's an organization, national organization called CASEL. And what does CASEL stand for? That stands for Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. Hence, they're the driving force behind the social emotional learning. Much like the CRT curriculum, they want this in every school K through 12. They're a national organization that started in 1994. The philanthropist Eileen Rockefeller and a Goldman, who is the author of Emotional Intelligence, founded the group, and now it's supported by the government and grants. I'll just give you a brief statement. They changed their statement on what social emotional learning means to them. Now they're kind of revamping it, and it's
because in the beginning it used to be the idea behind it is it's a good idea to help our kids. We all know that we all need emotional support. So the idea is good. We're just concerned about the application and the other things that they're teaching.
The application
with it, right?
is it based on activism? Are they really looking out for the kids, or is it like
Is there another agenda?
Is it a backdoor of CRT to hijack it? And I just want to give their updated definition on social emotional learning. It changed about a year ago. That social and emotional learning is an integral part of education and human development. SEL is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. SEL advances educational equity and excellence through authentic school, family, community partnerships to establish learning environments and experiences that feature trusting and collaborative relationships, rigorous, meaningful curriculum and instruction, and ongoing evaluation. SEL can help address various forms of inequity and empower young people and adults to co-create thriving schools and contribute to safe and healthy and just communities. So on the surface,
that sounds really good.
It sounds really good, but there's opponents that actually are referring to it as social emotional programming. SEL has become kind of the catch-all phrase that we've been hearing going around, and they say Castle claims of building kids' self-confidence as a status agenda of social engineering that insists on total conformity of thought. It disregards genuine individuality of students and their familiar relationships. They say it requires total compliance with its methods, content, and it's a monopoly on how children are taught. They go on to say that the agenda enforces conformity, it invades privacy, and it undermines the influence of family and faith in a child's life, and it serves to isolate children through pure modeled behavior. So as parents in society, we need to really dig into this and find out why there's so much controversy. Is it a backdoor for critical race theory? There's some heavy players on the national level that are involved in this with the School Board Association. There's big funding behind it, the foundations, Bill and Melinda Gates and Zuckerberg. So it's definitely worth digging into it.
And we want you to not take our word for it, but to do some of your own research. There's a lot of really great resources out there. Canyon School District, you can get on their Facebook page and find out what they've done. Lisa Logan and the Utah Parents United all have really great resources on Facebook. And Utah Parents United has their own website, too, that you can get on and find a lot of information on there.
And we can, after the show, post a link. Lisa Logan, who is the Utah Parents United Social, Emotional, and Learning advisor, she has a great YouTube video breaking it down if you want more information on what it entails. It's about a 90-minute video, but it's very, very informative presentation on what SEL is, what they are trying to accomplish it. And I just recommend people go and really take a deeper look into what it actually is.
So there's your homework for the week, is to look into social emotional learning, because we know that you all found out who your school board representative is, right?
If they did their homework and found out their rep, I was just thinking they could call them or email them and let them know what they would like to see on the agenda.
Yeah.
So our representatives should be able to put in theory,
parents should be able to voice their concerns, and our concerns should be able to be on the agenda. So that's one of the things that you could do. And if you do that and you reach out to your school board member, let us know how it goes. Let us know if you have questions or concerns, or you have good ideas that worked. We'd love to hear them.
Yeah, and we hope that they want to hear from us since we voted for them.
Yes. We are also hoping to hear a public statement from our board addressed to the USBA, stating their opposition to the statements made by the NSBA. So we're hoping that our own local school board is going to address our Utah State School Board, stating their opposition to the statements made about parents being domestic terrorists. Our board actually discussed this was it a month or so ago?
Yep. And just to clarify, we want them to talk. It's the Utah State Board Association. So not the school board, but the association.
Sorry, that was my bad.
No, that's okay. Just to clarify, the letter was from the National School Board Association.
Okay, and so there are two different committees there. But what happened was there was a lot of uproar, in our local cities and communities, because it was addressed from a national level to parents everywhere in the whole nation. And that is not something that our school board aligns with. And they stated it in a work meeting. They said this isn't something that they would encourage or support at all. And they discussed it amongst themselves how they would be making a public statement about that. And so we haven't seen that yet. We've been watching for it.
It's really important.
Yeah. And so we're hoping that they're going to address that.
So just coming from a parent's perspective.
Yeah. We would like some comfort knowing that they're not going to come after us.
Well, just in that meeting, it was reassuring that the board members were talking about that's not what we think of our parents, and that they thought,
and that they are watching the news and paying attention to what's going on too. So we thought it was a good meeting. We were impressed with the things that they were talking about it. So at the state level, also, there have been quite a few meetings in the last few weeks and months about transgender policies, and we're hoping that our school board will let us know their thoughts and their reactions to some of those new guidelines that are coming out. Also, on a local level, we're still looking for more parents who have children in the dual immersion, especially Chinese program, who would like to help with some stuff coming out with that. And if you are interested in budgets and know a lot about finances, if you could get a hold of us to help us with some projects we've got going on, that would be great. And Erica's going to talk about some state agenda.
Okay, so tomorrow there are actually 3 committee meetings going on at the same time, and I believe they're all from 9
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, all from 9 to noon, and you can watch those on the state school board's YouTube page, which is USBE Media, and I put a post on our Facebook page with that link in it. And just to know, there's the gender policies that we talked about last week, and so far this is only guidance and suggestions and how districts can address transgender pronoun use and bathroom access. And we urge this committee to ensure that parents' rights are protected and guaranteed in anything that they recommend. The Utah State School Board Law and Licensing Committee will be meeting to go over those library governance standards. And that starts at 9:15 with the public comment starting at first, which I really appreciate. The committee is the governing body over the schools for our K through 12, and they are going to address, there's been so many concerns raised about the books found in the libraries that contain pornographic or obscene material. And it's really important what they issue as guidance.
I'm just really curious what they can actually do because of Utah law. It just seems to be a complete conflict of, what Utah code says is allowed in schools and what's...
Yeah, so are they just talking about the issue? Are they just stating a letter of how they would direct each school district to handle the situation?
As I understand it, it'll be the guidance for each district's library, and
so it's not law. Each district then has autonomy to kind of do what they want-ish.
I think this is more binding, that they're going to try. So last week, the Utah Library Association and the Utah Education Association made a public statement saying that they will challenge censorship in any form.
I saw that.
And that they need to protect each child's access to books. Why would we need to protect a child's access to pornographic books is beyond me. I don't know.
And doesn't that, I would think just on face value, that has to violate some Utah law aside from code because of minors.
Right. There's harmful to minor laws that I believe it is violating. The people who are in opposition of removing books are claiming First Amendment rights, but protected...
But we're not asking the books be burned and nobody get them. We're just asking
but it's criminal.
Yeah.
Right. And child pornography and obscenity is not protected speech. And there's a lot of ins and outs on how that law works. But in our schools, we need to really make sure we protect our kids.
You would think that they couldn't go into a store and buy it. So why would they be able to check it out?
Well, and there used to be ordinances about having adult bookstores within a certain
distance. And you had to be over 18 even to get in to get in this section. So they would put the books in the little section, and you had to be 18 to go back there.
It just seems like there's a lot of legal issues with this.
And they couldn't be within a certain distance of the schools. And would we hire a teacher without vetting them? Of course not. Would we adopt a curriculum without vetting them? Yes.
Yes.
Have we allowed books in our school libraries without vetting them?
Yes, we have. And we're trying to
remedy that.
And rectify that because we want to keep our kids safe.
It's such a big thing because when you think of school, you think of lectures, but you think of books.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I think that most librarians aren't aware of what was in these books, and hopefully now that it's been brought to light that they can make it right and remove that from our school libraries.
I think what's more concerning is the Libraries Association and those guys coming out and speaking like almost like there's an agenda. Why would you defend it?
I don't know if they've met with the governor recently, and if that's because he also drew his line in the sand and these boards have drawn their line and they want to protect the books, it seems, more than they want to protect the child. And so I would encourage every parent to make a phone call, every legislature to make sure you're talking to the governor and to the school boards about what's appropriate for our children.
Maybe possible they're all working from the same talking points.
Thank you. Dana, you want to do national stuff?
Yeah, I'm just going to follow up on the national issues that we covered over the last few weeks. One was in pertaining to the National School Board Association letter that was written to the White House and the DO, the Department of Justice, using the FBI to investigate parents and domestic terrorists. That was back, I believe it was the first week of October. The Attorney General, Merrick Garland, was called before the Judiciary Senate Committee late October. Since then, the GOP coalition of senators that sit on the committee have written a letter just about 2 days ago to the Department of Justice asking that the Attorney General come back before the committee. They're accusing him of making inaccurate statements. There's been some documents that show that the Department of Justice and the White House were collaborating with the National School Board Association before the letter was written. So it wasn't necessarily an isolated incident that one person just threw out there without censorship. Is basically what it's saying. And so the Senate committee wants to talk with him again. The Department of Justice hasn't responded yet. That was only 2 days ago. So we'll just follow the story and keep you advised.
Okay. Thank you.
Another thing to follow up on was the Colorado mom that had her home raided a couple weeks ago by the FBI. Following up on that, the Colorado authorities say it has nothing to do with the school board meetings. It had to do with a breach in Mesa County's electoral computer system. The mother has been on a few shows. She denies it has anything to do with elections, that they're trying to intimidate her. She said this will not silence her. So far, there's been no charges. So again, we'll keep you informed on that one. Another thing that happened is our former governor, Gary Herbert, was assigned to... He was appointed by the Secretary of Education to, let me get this straight, the Education to the National Assessment Governing Board. Basically, they are the national report card about how schools are progressing. They weigh measures of the various subjects, including math, reading, science, writing, arts, civics, and more. I'm curious about what the more is.
So is the reason that that's such a big deal because we use kind of a common national standard of education? And is that where our common national standard comes from? Is that committee?
It's just a way that they nationally, it's a national report card on how things are progressing. It's comprised of 26 members. It's supposedly a nonpartisan commission that Congress established it back in 1988. But interestingly enough, I'm like, when I was researching, how did they pick
our governor?
And they say even though it's nonpartisan, it was a spot held for Republicans. So I found that was kind of interesting. I'm like, does he have a background in education?
Because he's a retired governor, so it didn't have to be.
No, and I'm not
a previously held person or a person who previously held a political position. It could have been anybody.
Exactly. And his claim is that he was really happy to be on it because he sat on the board for the Governors Association for governors, and that, you know, he thinks it's really important to have a seat at the table. Why they chose him, researching, I couldn't find where that was, but he was happy to serve on the board. He feels that it's a great, you know, Utah has a seat at the table. His former education advisor will be helping him in this position. It's a 4-year term, so I believe it goes through September 20.
And it's just an appointed position. It's not an elected position, correct?
One of 26. So my thinking is, well, maybe we have an ally on the national level. If not, we need to.
That's a good point. I didn't know that was it. I learned about that this week too, so I didn't know about that. So real quick, our deep dive for this week is homeschool versus public school. And I've actually had quite a few people within the last 6 months to a year reach out to me, and I'm sure all my mom helpers here have, because we each have an individual different story. Some of us have done homeschool forever. Some of us have done hybrid school. Some of us have done public school, and then we tried homeschool during COVID.
Which wasn't homeschool.
Which, yeah, technically, if you're forced to do it, then you don't really get a well-rounded picture. And just for the sake of time for today, we're actually next week, we're going to all tell our individual stories on give you a little bit more of a glimpse on why we're doing what we're doing and tell you a little bit more about our story. But my opinion on homeschool versus public school is that it's a very personal, individual choice, and that there's no wrong way to do it, and that you know your children and your family better than anyone knows them. And you have the capability, no matter what your education level is, no matter what your financial status is, if you feel like you need to homeschool your kids, that's what your kids need. If you feel like your kids need public school, that's what your kids need.
I was just going to add about the forced homeschooling from COVID. Usually it takes more than a day or a week to plan that, to come up with that decision.
Yes, it takes a while. And I know, Erica, so tell us a little bit about your homeschool experience.
So I have a senior in high school, so he goes to traditional, and then I have 4 kids at home. And I love it because we can study whatever we want to study. We read a lot of classic literature and study the Founding Fathers' Constitution. And I just really appreciate the time I get to spend with them, and the older kids get to spend with the younger kids. And there are so many resources. I want to go over a little bit of those next time maybe, but
we'll get into the resources.
Did that
and stuff.
stem from out of COVID? Was that one of the good things that came out of COVID for your family personally?
You guys have been homeschooling for a while, haven't you?
For a long time.
You have.
Yep,
Okay.
We've done both, but I really agree with you. It's a personal decision, and if it's what you feel is best for your children, then do it and have fun with it, and just learn as you go, and just know that there's people out there that can help.
They say you really get to know your kids.
Yes. And just real quick, we have on our Facebook page, her name is Aditi. I think I pronounced that right. They have a place called Learning Space here in town. And if you're kind of like trying to figure things out, that's a really good resource. If you kind of want to look in like a hybrid situation, or it's just another resource out there, there's so many things. So we'll get into that more next week.
They are offering right now a spelling class that starts tomorrow. I'm going to put a plug in for the Learning Space if anybody's interested.
I need that for me.
And the Facebook groups too. There's St. George Homeschoolers, and this Aditi's page, I believe, is Community Homeschool Group. Lots of events happening, field trips, groups that do different activities. So
Seems like it's a decent sized community here.
It's a huge community here. But if you're on the plug for public school, if you're going to do public school here, get involved. You can't just take your kids to school and be like, oh, it's going to be perfect. It's not.
We would like to meet you December 14th.
Yes, we would. If you are a public school mom all the way.
Or a grandma or an aunt.
Or a dad, or whatever your situation.
Yes, dads.
Make time December 14th to come to that meeting, because you need to be invested in what's coming with your education, what's here, what's great, and what needs to change. And then what is wonderful in Southern Utah that we want to finish with today?
I'll start with mine. So I've only been in Southern Utah about 18 months, but there's been a lot of political stuff that has happened with elections, and I've been fortunate enough to be a little closer up and see some of it. I would like to give a shout out. Washington County voted for a new sheriff, Nate Brooksby. They had 2 great candidates, and they love the Constitution. They love our county. Like the school board, they hold a county position, and it was great to meet both of them and see their ideas. And Nate won, and so it was. Yeah,
good. I got to meet both the candidates too, and it was awesome that we got to pick between 2 really good guys. Like, I would have been happy. They both had different, really strong strong traits and attributes, but Nate did win, and I think he'll be great for the community. And they
both had great experience, just different roads to get them where they were.
Yep. I thought that was awesome too.
So that was Tuesday.
To see two really good candidates.
I'm happy to live in Washington County.
So I love that there's so many people here that do. We'll save that for next week.
Hey, thank you for listening today. And remember, find out your school board member and show up on the 14th. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Your Voice, Your Choice podcast with Harmony Vanderhorst. Like and follow our Facebook page, subscribe with your favorite podcast platform, and most importantly, share this with your friends. Till next time, this has been Your Voice, Your Choice podcast with Harmony Vanderhorst. This has been a production from A Podcast Studio.